Hey, everybody, welcome to Chuck Yates Needs a Job, the podcast. I saw that Exxon was going to mine lithium in Arkansas. And so I figured I needed to learn a lot more about this stuff. So I was looking around for the best experts on the planet, come geek out, talk lithium. And so that's what we're going to try to do today. I'm honored to have on Daniel Layton and John Burba. And guys, I have one listener of this podcast. It's my mom. So do y'all mind telling Sally Yates real quick who you are, and then maybe in just a minute or two, can we do really simple intro to lithium? What is it? Why do we need it? And then we'll try to geek out on what you guys are doing.
John, you want to?
Sure. I'm John Burba. I've been in the chemical industry for a very long time. In fact, it's embarrassing to say how long. I've been in lithium a long time also. Um, yeah, I was in the very first DLE project ever, and we built a plant in Hombre Muerto in Argentina, and that thing started up in 1998. It's a direct lithium extraction plant. I invented the absorbent that is used. So, and I'll answer your question of what is lithium and why does it matter. Lithium is a salt. It's similar to table salt. It's different though, and the reason lithium matters is it is without a doubt the best battery metal on the planet. And so it allows these super high energy, super fast lithium batteries that are powering so much of our technology today.
Gotcha. Daniel, say hi to mom real quick.
Hi, Mom. Um, lithium is in its place, not something that's going to replace hydrocarbons. It's something that's going to work alongside it for years. Synergies between oil and gas and lithium, especially in the United States, are extremely strong. The numbers, there's a massive shortage coming up, and it's going to have more. Whether you like the energy transition, don't like the energy transition, it doesn't really matter because you have so much of Europe already set that can't turn back on this. It's going to create an economic wave that will eventually be, really bad for the US. So it's something that's lacked investment because people wanted to build gigafactories. Well, there's no raw material to supply those gigafactories. Supply demand is really, really significant. I think people don't quite understand the significance of lithium, and the effects it could have economically and send ripples throughout the world. I mean, it's a significant thing.
So if we're kind of breaking down lithium and we're talking about batteries, we're talking about everything, right, from cell phones to electric vehicles, right? That this is
Remote controls, battery storage, replaceable ever-ready batteries or Duracell batteries.
and so how do you get lithium up? Give me a short history of how you actually mine lithium, because my understanding is it's not the prettiest process on the planet.
Well, I'm going to
Sure.
let this great for Dr. Burba. Remember, Dr. Burba, he's a very modest man. He is the one that basically invented the process of DLE. And we can explain later why DLE is absolutely critical to this and one of probably the only ways you're going to get to any reasonable numbers by 27 and 2030 without a massive economic collateral damage.
So thank you, Dan. I'll give you a really quick rundown. Lithium originally was a hard rock mining operation, still is today. And today, most of the lithium that's produced comes from this ore spodumene. It is a typical mining operation. It's open pit. There's a lot of crushing, huge amount of chemical consumption, gigantic amount of chemical waste, a lot of pollution, but they can produce good quality lithium carbonate from it. So that's one tier. The second tier is brine operation.
What part of the world are these is lithium found when you're talking about finding rock lithium?
Okay. The largest production is out of Australia. And basically, they operate like a gravel operation. They mine it and crush it. They put the rock in large containers and ship it to China. And then the Chinese do the chemical processing. There are obviously numerous other spodumene deposits scattered around the world. It just so happens that Australia has exceedingly high quality ore, higher than just about everybody else. Then you've got solar evaporation processes or saltworks processes. And that's a situation where you've got a lithium rich brine. It'll have a lot of other components in it. And so they pump that out of the ground into enormous evaporation ponds. And then as the water evaporates, salts come out in a particular order based on their chemistry. So you drop out sodium and then potassium and so forth. And then hopefully you get lithium at the last, but it's always very impure. So the purification steps necessary to get to high quality lithium are quite onerous and very expensive, and the yields are not very good. So they're only getting about a 35 to 40% yield on those kinds of processes. And so all of that is kind of the reason that Dow Chemical, when I joined the company in 1979, was hyper focused on extracting lithium in a different way. So the group I went into, we were looking for a way to just pull lithium chloride out of the brine and then let the brine go by. And so we didn't call it direct lithium extraction at the time, but that's what it was. So
If
we
we,
started.
hey, sorry to cut you off, John, but just real quick to maybe level set a timeline, and we don't need
Sure.
specifics, but just generally, maybe when did we first kind of start using lithium? The two processes you just talked about on how to find lithium, when did we kind of start doing that? And then
Sure.
jump into what you guys did at Dow.
Yeah, well, lithium was discovered in the late 1800s. Okay, so but the first real serious use of lithium was in the early 1900s, and it was used in glass because lithium lowers the melting point of glass and it makes it stronger. Okay, so that was one of the big uses. During World War II, the U.S. Department of Energy, I guess it's Department of Energy, discovered that you could use lithium compounds like lithium stearate, and you could take that material and blend it with oil and make a grease that does not melt. That was considered to be top secret for a long time during World War II because our tanks could operate without having to be re-greased every 6 hours. German tanks couldn't. So they were always having to stop and go out and re-grease. The American tanks could operate because the grease didn't melt. So that was the first significant military use of lithium. Then the next big deal, of course, was the atomic bomb, which was uranium, and then the hydrogen bomb, which is based on lithium.
Interesting.
And so those took place, the atomic bomb, of course, was during World War II, and then the hydrogen bomb came sometime after that.
Interesting. So then you joined Dow, and you guys are sitting there going, "This is so inefficient, etc. Lithium's important." What'd you start doing there?
Okay, so Dow was interested in lithium because at that time the company was exceedingly forward looking. They were really focused on understanding things and affecting life and technology. So they recognized that lithium was the best metal for a battery. So, all of the batteries we use are based on metals. Okay. And so lithium has such an incredibly high voltage that it generates compared to everything else. It becomes the ideal metal for a battery. And it's very, very light. so Dow was focused on extracting lithium from their own resources. Dow was a brine chemical company. They played around with spodumene a little bit, but they were not particularly interested in mining. And so they started looking for lithium in all of their brine resources, and they found it. And in one resource, it was pretty significant. And so then the question was, how do you get lithium out of that brine? Now, this was in the 1950s. And then starting about 1954, 55, they started a program that ran up to about 1968. And they poured ridiculous amounts of money in that time frame. They put tens of millions of dollars into, and this is 1960s dollars, into learning how to get the lithium out, and they failed. They couldn't do it. And so the group that I joined was headed up by a guy named Bill Bauman, and he had been the chief technology officer for Dow forever. And he was hired during the Depression, and he was at the age where he stepped down from his VP role and all those things. And he just wanted to run this business, and he was fixated on lithium. And so his idea was, we've got to find something that will reach into the brine and just pull the lithium out. In 1980, I invented that compound.
Nice.
And so that kind of began our serious run. Now they had looked at some things that sort of worked, but they were not very effective. But this material that I invented was really significant because it spontaneously pulls lithium and chloride ions into a lattice, and then when you rinse it with water, the lithium chloride comes back out. So that gives you a mechanism for picking up lithium exclusively from brines and then being able to cleanly release it. So we started doing a lot of lab work. We had a team that was working on it. We created this material that we could put into an extraction column, which is just like a pipe. And we could run the brine through there and then run water and extract it. And we set up a pilot operation in Arkansas and ran that for about 9 months. And then Dow sold the entire brine chemical business, and that project was over for us. But we demonstrated it at that time. I went ahead, did other things, got tired of Dow, and joined another company, and then it folded, and then I ended up at FMC Corporation. Well, right before I joined FMC, Bill, who was retired and bored, called me up and he said, we got to come up with a better absorbent than what we've made. And so he and I got together and we came up with a second generation material and we patented it. And then I went to work for FMC, not on lithium, on other things. But FMC owned a spodumene mine in North Carolina. And they had depleted it. They had only about 5 or 6 years of ore left, and they had to do something. So they had acquired a resource in Argentina called Salar Hombre Muerto. It's a very famous salar. And they tried to do solar evaporation on the small scale there, and it failed. The chemistry was not right for solar evaporation. And so they were desperate. They were going to lose that lithium business. And so they asked me if the patents that Bill and I had filed would work on extracting that lithium. And I said yes. And so I was meeting with my boss, and I were meeting with one of the senior vice presidents of the company. And his name was Reg Hall. He was a great guy. And Reg looked at me and he said, so you've only got about 4.5 years to get all of this put together and get it started up. And he said, how much of this magic material have you made? And I said, well, so far we've made 2.5 grams. And Reg just put his hands over his face and shook his head. And he said, we're all going to get screwed. But we had a crash program in Princeton, New Jersey. That's where the lab was. And we pulled it off. We made the absorbent. We tested it. I put together the first level design of the plant. FMC had a fabulous detailed engineering group, handed it off to them, and they knocked it out. It was great. And then the company very wisely hired Fluor to build the plant. And so it was built and started up in 1998 and has been running ever since. And that
Oh,
is a
wow.
direct extraction plant. So just to comment, a lot of people act like direct lithium extraction was just discovered. The first commercial use began in 1998.
That's interesting. You know, it's my dad's one of his best friends from high school was a longtime energy guy, um, really a midstream guy, pipelines, gas gathering, processing, that stuff. And, you know, me being very, very young in my career, I would go eat lunch about every 6 months with Jim, and we'd talk about the energy business. And at one point in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was, call it 6 or 7 years into my career, thinking I really knew what I was doing. And oil was at $8 a barrel. So I stopped becoming an E&P guy. The internet was taking off. So I became a power technology banker. You know, marketing's
Mhm.
very important in these things. And I kind of fell upon this thesis of, you know, we need to rebuild the grid so that we can have more reliable power because the microchip's a lot more sensitive than your refrigerator. And so I was flywheel batteries, fuel cells, and I would go eat lunch with Jim and talk about this, and Jim would wax poetically about all these things that I didn't even know about him. And I was always so amazed at how current he was. He was like, "Oh hell, we had a wave of that back in the '70s. We had a wave of that back in the '50s." He said, "None of this stuff's new." But anyway, that's the same thing. So if I kind of look at lithium today-ish, how much are we? And you can just ballpark on this. How much are we extracting? What I'll call crush mining, evaporation versus DLE stuff.
Today, there's virtually no DLE other than the plant at that Livent owns, and it's actually Lithium America. Is it Lithium Americas, Dan?
What? Oh
No,
no,
it's
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 no, it's called Arcadium.
Arcadium. That's right. So FMC spun out Livent, and Livent did a joint venture that became Arcadium. So they're still producing around 20,000 tons per year, roughly. But they're the only direct lithium extraction operation that, commercial that's out there of any significance. The Chinese may have a few small ones, but that's about it. The vast majority, well, around 60% of the lithium production is spodumene, the hard rock mining.
Okay.
And then there's probably roughly 30%, 35% that is solar evaporation in Chile.
Which is brine,
That's brine.
what you
And
would
so
use on DLE.
gotcha. So maybe level set. Everybody in the world needs more lithium. We're going to have so many more cell phones and car batteries and all that. What's going on out there in terms of trying to find more lithium? And then maybe from that, we'll roll into what you guys are doing and hear some specifics on that.
Well, I
Well,
think it's, go ahead, John, but it's you're seeing a last minute scramble. People are trying to catch up. You've got a lot of games being played with pricing. And I think where this gets really interesting, Chuck, is and when you say is it important? Well, if you think about it, you've got China trying to control the market. Russia was trying to before the war. You have Saudi Aramco. You've got ADNOC now announced they're getting in the lithium business. You've got Exxon that announced they're in it and are in it and drilling. You've got Oxy that's in it. This is a really, really significant geopolitical energy moment with this because will it ever be more important than oil? Maybe. Whenever it is probably going to be outside of our lifetimes anyway. By the time you're going to see something take over that far, the transition is going to be measured in decades, not in a few years. Um, And the thing is, because they put the mandates so unrealistically in the beginning, they got Europe hooked. I mean, Europe can't go back, just can't. It's too far committed. But you've seen things really get a lot better too, like charging capacities and the amount of chargers you can get in Europe. I mean, they're absolutely everywhere. And they had the problem they were having here. Remember, Cattle's got a new battery right now that's supposed to charge in 10 minutes. That's a game changer.
Yeah, it's
No.
what's really interesting. So the other podcast I do is called Big Digital Energy. We call that the weekly summary of the energy business for people that think Jim Cramer sucks. And but there are four of us. There are four of us on there, and one of the things we've done is my girlfriend's British, and so when we would sit there and talk about Europe, she would let me have it. Europe is not a uniblock. We're 30 different countries, blah, blah, blah. So what we did last year on the podcast is we took an individual European country and went through its energy uses, its energy makeups, just in short order. And one of the things I didn't realize, but I found fascinating, the whole reason Europe could do all this stuff, go as far renewables as they want, they have a massive baseload battery sitting in France with all these nuclear plants.
Oh, absolutely.
On certain days, France is exporting 35% of the electricity it makes. So that's why the Germans could ditch nuclear. That's why the Germans could do all the renewables. Same with Great Britain, et cetera. And I did not appreciate that until we started breaking down these countries. So real quick on the lithium market today, it sounds like to me there are two components. There's the mining / evaporation. Let's get the raw material, and then there's processing. Do we know kind of how much in the way of nationalities control each of those buckets? Because I mean, the one thing you always hear about is China's trying to corner the market on all this stuff.
No, right now they have it cornered. They got 98%, 97, 98% of the processing.
Yeah. Interesting.
It might be down to 95 now, 94, but it's still north of 90%, the processing capacity. And when this first rush started in South America, I mean, the Chinese companies were down there. They've partnered with everybody. They've bought up enormous resource positions, paid hundreds and hundreds of millions, billions actually, for it. They want to control it because they've got the EV car business. BYD wants to become the number one, electric car company in the world.
Yeah.
Everybody's racing. That's why now like I said, now you've got Saudi in it. Now you've got the whole UAE trying to get into the industry. I mean, this is a big thing.
Gotcha. So going forward, what are people trying to do? Are there various competing technologies in addition to guys running around with pickaxes looking for more lithium, or kind of give me the state of the industry?
There is, and then I'll let John talk about it because, the problem is there's nothing you can do. They've waited too long. You are going to slow down the transition or whatever you want to call it. You're going to slow down the EV business. You're going to slow down the battery storage business. You're going to slow things down because there just isn't any way to get enough project. Now, I'm not saying that John's technology saves the whole world and the problem with it, but it is the only thing that I know of that's out there on the market that actually takes an enormous bite out of it, that can actually make a difference for people on a lot of levels, from the indigenous people in certain places because of the water attributes put into this. And it's just, there's a lot to this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the solar evaporation issues, what Dan was just talking about, are enormous. The water depletion, the wastage, the salt piles, all of that's really putting a gigantic damper on solar evaporation processes. Excuse me. Virtually all the spodumene is processed in China. So direct lithium extraction from natural resources such as oil field brines, and there are some other brine areas that are useful, I think is the best path. The big issue right now is literally time to market. How long does it take to find a resource, develop that resource, build extraction plants, and then produce products? And that's the big snag in the deal right now. So the core problem with the direct lithium extraction, which is, I'll say direct lithium extraction, I think holds the highest potential of solving this whole lithium shortage issue, because it has the potential of being cleaner and more effective at extracting lithium. Now we've got a different take on it than everybody else does. We have built a modular and transportable plant. So we can pick our plant up. First of all, it's built in a fab shop. We can pick it up, take it in pieces, and move it to pretty much anywhere we want to take it, reassemble it, and start it up. Now, this is a patented plant. Our patents have issued, so we're really pleased about that. We have multiple patents on this thing. But the other piece of it is that time to market issue that I was talking about a minute ago is particularly important right now because of all the things that Dan talked about. A conventional lithium plant, and let's just say it's going to be 20,000 metric tons per year on an oil field brine. And, so we'll just take that as kind of a placeholder. A 20,000 ton plant is going to take about 6 years to build if you build it from scratch. And 20,000 metric tons is a fraction of the amount of lithium that we need to be producing over the next 6 or 8 or 10 years. I mean, that doesn't even move the needle. That's the reason I was saying time to market is such a big deal. We can build one of our plants in roughly 10 to 12 months. We can transport it anywhere in the United States in about a month. And we just proved that because we moved our first plant halfway across the United States in 1 month.
Yeah, because Exxon's talking, and I get that Exxon is not the pillar of speed in any way, shape, or form, but I mean they're talking first lithium in like 2030, right? And
Yeah.
they claim they're kicking off the project in Arkansas right about now. So I think that that's talking 6 years.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That 6 year number.
It's a problem everybody has, Chuck. And when you get in the U.S., here's a couple interesting points. It's our belief, and I think John and I share this, that the U.S. could become the number one lithium producer in the world. You
Mm-hmm.
have so many advantages. We're finding resource concentrations that equal Argentina, and you can get a drilling permit in a day. You can get a reinjection permit in 30 days. In Argentina, in 6 months, you're lucky if you have your drilling permits. And you're operating in really rough logistical situation where you have no utilities, you have no water, you have no buildings, hotels. In the US, you pull off the road, you hook up your utilities, it's like an oil field site. And that's the other thing, people like to make this narrative of EV or electrification versus hydrocarbon. And I think we look at it correctly. I mean, the two are synergistic. I mean, what it does for the oil field to be able to go in and produce these oil field brines, you're not just bringing drilling companies back, you're bringing service companies, you're bringing small towns that maybe have been dead and depleted fields for a while. I mean, rig counts will go up. I mean, it's a significant thing for the oil energy, and that's why you're seeing one of the reasons you're seeing all the big oil get into it. This is a very synergistic thing with oil. The two don't need to be fighting each other; they need to be complementing each other.
One of the regions that we're really interested in, I'm not going to mention where it is, but it's basically a depleted oil field, and the amount of lithium in it is staggering. It is just unbelievable how much lithium is there. So Dan is 100% right, and I mean, from an economic standpoint, we can revitalize areas that have really gone down when the oil depleted.
So let
So
me tell. Oh, sorry. I want
go
to
ahead.
get this in real quick, Chuck. This is important. Don't hold me to this. This is, estimates of what we use as our base estimate, not any projections of what we'll do or anybody can do, but this is the rule of thumb we use. Every 20,000 ton plant, all the way to carbonate, from resource to carbonate, at $20 a ton, will do somewhere between 180 and 200 million a year EBITDA. So in a public marketplace, historically, when before the things got a little roughed up here, 10x was not unreasonable. So you're talking, $2 billion valuation for every, depending on, could be anywhere from 4 to 800 million investment. That's a pretty good return. It's significant numbers.
Yeah, so I want to jump into the economics, but I did promise John that we'd geek out. John, I'm gonna
Go
put you a
for it.
little bit on a pitch count. We don't have forever, but if you wanted to give your PhD level dissertation to the engineers of the world, what is your process actually doing? And I get that you have patents and commercial secrets. I'm not looking for that, but I'd love to hear just, what are you doing? What's your special sauce?
Okay. So basically, we start with a resource that has reasonable lithium concentration. We pump the brine out of the resource. There's some early stage cleanup of trash. Then that goes into our system, and we have a series of very highly efficient extraction columns. And the media that we have a dramatically improved media over what we did at FMC. That is in these columns. And then the brine flows through those columns and the lithium is extracted out. So, we measure concentration in parts per million. Okay. So, a million parts per million is all of it. So to give you an idea. So the concentration of the lithium in in this brine is going to be around 600 parts per million, which is, like Dan was saying, that's similar to what you would see in Argentina. Okay, we will take that 600 parts per million down to single digits, like 1 or 2 parts per million. In this process, it just sucks it right up. Then, when that media is saturated, we shift that over to regeneration step. We run a regeneration fluid through the system, and we get a clean lithium chloride solution that comes out of that. We then we use water in our regeneration step, so we want to recover the water. So now we take that lithium chloride solution and we run it through probably one of the most advanced RO systems ever built.
What does
And we can
RO mean?
reverse osmosis.
Reverse osmosis. Okay.
Yes. I'm sorry. Thank you for.
Oh,
We all fall into the acronym thing, but
and I have a passion for being ignorant, so it works well. I don't mind asking the question.
So we'll take a lithium chloride solution that's a few percent lithium chloride in the water, and then we will run that through the reverse osmosis process. We'll get about 12% lithium chloride. In doing that, we have recovered 94% of our process water in that one step. Then we're going to want to ship the lithium chloride to a production plant. So we want the concentration to be up around 35, 40%. And so we do an evaporation step and condense water, and that gives us another 4.5% of our processed water. So we'll be recovering over 98% of our processed water on every loop. We can do that because we don't have to use chemicals in our process. A lot of the other direct lithium extraction processes must use chemicals, and therefore they end up with salt water, and that's wastewater. Can't do anything with that. And so that wastewater, they got to figure out what to do with it. And that's not an easy task. A lot of people think they can just pump that back down into a formation. That's not the way like in Texas, that's not the way the Railroad Commission looks at it, nor in Arkansas.
Don't worry. Don't worry, the Railroad Commission doesn't actually look at it. You're fine.
Okay. But at any rate, the point is we have the cleanest process, I believe, out there. We can build one of these plants and deploy it because it's modular. If we're in an area and that depletes, we haven't lost the plant. We simply pack it up, move it someplace, and set it up again.
So
In
I want
many
to,
ways, it's very similar to the oil field, and therefore it's complementary to these kinds of operations.
I kind of want to tie y'all's two comments together, and I'll throw out some random questions, and you guys take it. What is kind of the ideal scenario in terms, and I don't even know what metric to ask, but is
Mhm.
there so many barrels a day of wastewater production or brine water production? What's kind of the footprint of one of these plants? How much do they cost? And ultimately, I'm trying to ask that question. So if somebody hears this and they've got a good application for you, they call, as well as kind of just thinking through in my mind where are best places for this to work. So if that kind of nebulous question makes any sense.
Sure. Well, to begin with, I mean, if there is a lithium resource, whether it's like a solar or something like that, our technology would fit. In the United States, the most likely places for this to go, for instance, would be in certain oil field formations. And there are some that are enormous, very broad over the United States. Um, and the equipment, as I said, because of this modular system, we can we can adjust, we can build, we can expand, we can break it apart, we can move it. So we can make this thing fit the production requirements in the area. So for instance, if we're on in one of these oil field applications, you might have enough brine, say, to produce 10,000 metric tons per year in a particular area. Okay. And you might have to move 2 or 3 miles away to get another zone that's similar to that. Okay. Pretty soon it becomes very difficult just from piping to ship enough brine to a static location. So a conventional plant is really not a very good location situation for that. We can put these plants around, like I say, everywhere. The footprint of one of our plants is only about 2 acres, 2.5 acres. So they're very small. And we don't have to have foundations. All we need to have is stabilized soil, just like a drilling rig. So in many ways, this is absolutely comparable and supportive of an oil field kind of operation. So you go into one of these areas, with a very good brine. It's just like oil field operations. You bring in a drilling rig, you drill down, you set your casing, perforate, do whatever you're going to do, and set up your flow lines. Simultaneously, you set one of these plants down, you hook it up, and you start it up, and you're producing lithium chloride.
Cool.
So that's pretty much the way it goes. If that gets depleted, if that well gets depleted, well gets shut in, we pick up the equipment and move it to the next location.
Interesting. Interesting. Is there kind of you had said 600 parts per million earlier. Is that kind of an average? Is that sort of a minimum of what you need, or
No,
am I
no,
confusing numbers?
no, you're not confusing numbers. I think that I was talking about 600 parts per million. That's a really good brine for Argentina and also certain resources in North America. There are other resources that are lower. There's some that are ridiculously low, and it's not economic. We like to look at a cutoff around 200 parts per million. We could conceivably go lower. We're continually making improvements on our technologies, so actually going lower than 200 may be a lot more economic than we thought a year ago because of some improvements that we've made in our absorbent and extraction technology. So, but Lithium
The
is
higher concentration, the better. It's all
that's right,
a function of
more economic.
capex.
The
You
higher
know, so you really want to get a quick. I like 350 is kind of a cutoff on it, just because the capex. Because see, that's the next problem the industry faces, Chuck, is that it's difficult to get institutional financing in the mining business. Now it's getting better. We're starting to get a lot more situations that are good in that respect. But it's tough, and there needs to be more than one DLE company than us out there too. By the way, there
Right.
needs to be several. If every project that's announced comes online, we're still short lithium by 28, 29.
So let me
Interesting.
add one thing about the capex that Dan was talking about. One of the advantages of our modular system, simply because of the way that it's built, our capex is way less than half of a conventional plant, probably around a third of the capital cost. So not only is it stunningly faster, it's less expensive. So we have some really significant advantages in both of those situations.
And how are you guys doing this? Are you going to go in, lease acreage, drill the wells? Are you trying to partner with oil and gas companies? Kind of what's the business model going forward?
I think it's all of the above. We're pretty opportunistic right now since we're just getting started.
It's a
Uh,
bespoke situation.
mm,
Yeah, gotcha. And have you guys had a plant up and running yet, or are we still looking for our first project to put the puck on the ice with?
well, we tested this plant at the fab shop and had it reviewed by a company called SLR, an engineering firm. But we just recently transported our plant to a resource. I can't tell you where it is, it's all confidential. But we transported the plant about halfway across the United States to a resource. That whole transportation took 1 month. And it was 37 packages that we shipped out on trucks. We relocated it in a month, and we will have it on stream in probably, or almost there. So it could be on stream in a total of about, of another month. So about 2 months to place it and start it up. And, we'll be running that process and extracting lithium. So we're really excited about this. This will be our first commercial plant.
Oh, cool. I hope I have an invite to come out and bring a camera guy, because we'd love to shoot some footage kind of out on
We'd love
site.
to have you.
It'd be awesome to see it work. So um maybe kind of I got one last question. Um just to make sure I'm thinking about this right. Basically, if I own oil and gas assets and I've got north of 200 parts per million lithium in my wastewater coming out, and 350 and more, even better, I should reach out and give you guys a shout, because there'd at least be something you ought to kill some brain cells talking about. Is that what I have right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely. Wouldn't
cool.
you
So
say so, Dan?
say
Absolutely.
that. So give me your company name, website. How do people reach you guys?
Well, it's International Battery Metals, and the website is internationalbatterymetals.com. And people could, you can go on our website and you can see all of the key folks, but they can reach out to me. There's a fellow named Gary Flowers, Josh Abear. You can reach out to any of us, and we're more than happy to talk. They can reach out to Dan. He's on our board. He'll be happy to talk with him as well. So, um, we're a small company, and so we don't have a lot of bureaucracy yet. So,
So Dan, if you're in, I jokingly at Digital Wildcatters am the galactic viceroy. They told me I needed a title, and that sounded really, really cool, right?
Why
And
not?
so Colin always says he has to run around behind me and correct everything I say. So is that they'll reach out to you, and then John can come in and say, "Well, Dan didn't exactly mean it this way," but well, you guys were cool to come on and babysit me and educate me on this. I really appreciate it.
No, it's a topic that's not getting enough attention on a lot of levels. It's starting to, though. It's starting to. But that's
And
mainly because of big oil coming in. That's what's getting it the attention.
and I will say this, and I truly believe this. If you really are serious about the environment and those type of issues, you've got to be somewhat pragmatic and recognize that we're going to need to do these type things. And despite anything you think about the oil and gas industry, the mining companies and all that, it is a lot cleaner and better for the environment if it's done in the United States versus other places. I mean,
Oh,
if you
absolutely.
yeah, if you're gonna say we can't do it here in the United States and just export it to some other country, you know, I always say on the podcast, we don't have a peeing and non-peeing section of the pool. If you pee in the pool,
Right.
you've peed in the pool. So
That's right.
Yeah,
That's correct.
it's a good analogy.
cool. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on. This was fascinating to me because I really meant what I said at the end. If we truly want to be serious about the energy transition and not just demagogue and that sort of stuff, we need to be doing things in the United States. We just
Yeah.
do.
Well, and anytime you're trying to do something that's different, it's an opportunity for new technology, new ideas, new concepts. And that's what really turns me on. I like that kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
No, I think that's right. So, well, nice to meet you guys. You
Chuck,
guys ever
pleasure.
in
Thank you
Houston?
very much.
Yeah, you guys ever in Houston? Love to go grab lunch or
John's there.
a drink.
John's there all the time. I may be
Yep.
back. I may be through Houston next week, actually.
I'll be in
Okay.
Thought I was
Houston
gonna
next
be
week.
through
I'll
this
be in
week.
Houston at the
Yeah.
latter part of this week. Yep.
So I'm running to Vegas tomorrow to play in the World Oilman's Poker Tournament, and after I win it,
Ah,
I'll have money. I'll have money to be able to buy lunch whenever you guys hit town.
That sounds like a winner. Good luck.
have fun.
Take
All
care.
right, I'm gonna take care, guys.